Hello. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to question everything. For years, I trusted blindly because that's what love looked like to me. Quiet, stable, and secure. I wasn't someone who jumped at shadows or let suspicion ruin my peace. But looking back, maybe that was my first mistake. Ignoring the signs until they weren't signs anymore, but glaring warning lights flashing in my face. It started on a Sunday morning when we were having coffee on the porch. We used to do that every weekend, sit in silence while the world woke up around us. She was scrolling through her phone, occasionally smiling at something, but not sharing it with me. That wasn't unusual. People have their private worlds these days, but something about the way her fingers tapped on the screen felt secretive. I couldn't explain it, just a gut feeling, the kind that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. I didn't confront her. What would I even say? Hey, you're texting too fast, so I'm suspicious? I shook it off, convincing myself I was being paranoid. But then it became a pattern. She'd disappear to the gym for longer hours than usual, often coming home flushed, claiming the spin class ran late, or the trainer kept her for an extra session. I should have been reassured, but I wasn't. The gym bag she tossed on the floor seemed heavier with secrets every time she came home. One night, when she was in the shower, I saw her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up, revealing a message notification from a number saved as EPT. Just initials. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to be that husband, the one who snoops through his wife's phone, but the message stayed on the screen long enough for me to catch the first line. Thanks for tonight. Can't wait for tomorrow. The words seared themselves into my brain, replaying on a loop as I stood there, frozen. She had told me she was at the gym late, something about a new class and extra stretching. Stretching. The word suddenly felt like a bad joke. My pulse quickened as I tried to process what it could mean. My instincts told me I wasn't overreacting, but I didn't have proof. Not yet. I couldn't sleep that night. She lay next to me, breathing evenly, as if she had nothing to hide. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about what I'd just seen. The message might have been innocent. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe I was making something out of nothing. But the doubt clung to me like a second skin. The next morning, I made the decision. I would find out the truth, one way or another. I installed tracking software on her phone that afternoon. It wasn't hard. I'd never done anything like it before, but technology these days makes it easy to do things you shouldn't. A simple app that mirrored her messages, her locations, and anything else I needed. All it took was 5 minutes and a quiet moment when she wasn't looking. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that I just needed to prove my gut was wrong. I wanted to believe it was paranoia, that I'd seen nothing unusual, and we could go back to our Sunday mornings on the porch without this weight pressing down on me. But even as I thought it, a part of me knew that once you open a door like this, there's no closing it. By the end of the day, the app was running smoothly, sending me updates. I felt sick every time my phone vibrated. I didn't check it at work. I wasn't ready to face whatever I might find. But when I got home, while she was busy in the kitchen, I sat on the couch and finally unlocked my phone. The first message hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just text from EPT. It was photos, locations, and time-stamped entries from the gym and places I'd never even heard of. One of the photos showed her in workout gear, but she wasn't at the gym. She was standing outside what looked like a hotel, her hair tied back, smiling for the camera. His camera. I dropped the phone onto my lap and stared blankly at the wall. The evidence wasn't just there, it was overwhelming. And, as much as I hated myself for it, part of me wasn't even surprised. I had been seeing it all along, but chose to ignore it until it was too late. The question now wasn't whether or not she was cheating. It was how long she'd been doing it and how much of my life had been a lie. As I sat there, a new message popped up on the screen. Same time tomorrow? I clenched my jaw, a slow burn of anger settling in my chest. Tomorrow. She had plans tomorrow. And now so did I. I didn't say a word to her that evening. She hummed in the kitchen while making dinner, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I sat at the table, hands folded, trying to act like everything was normal when all I wanted to do was slam my fist down and demand answers. But not yet. I wasn't ready to hear her excuses or face the lies she'd surely try to sell me. The silence between us wasn't tense, at least not for her. She talked about her day, how the gym was packed, how the personal trainer, Eric, as she finally revealed his name, was pushing her to new limits. I watched her closely as she spoke, trying to detect any hesitation, any sign that she knew I was onto her. But her voice was steady, her gaze never faltered, and that made it worse. She had become an expert at deception. After dinner, she cleaned up while I sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. Every few minutes, I glanced over at her, wondering if I should just blurt it out. "I know what you've been doing," but something held me back. Maybe it was pride, or the fear of hearing her deny it. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to catch her red-handed, leave her with no room to wiggle out of it. That night, I barely slept again. The bed felt colder even with her lying right next to me. Her breathing was soft and steady. But to me, it sounded like a reminder of how easily she could rest while I was losing sleep over the betrayal she'd been hiding. I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying every moment we'd spent together, wondering when things had changed and why I hadn't noticed. Morning came, and she left for the gym like usual. She kissed me on the cheek, her lips barely grazing my skin, and walked out the door as if nothing was wrong. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed my phone and checked the app. She was already messaging him. The conversation was casual at first, small talk about breakfast and workouts, but then it shifted, and I felt my stomach churn. He asked if she had packed her special gear, and she responded with a winking emoji. I didn't need to know what that meant. My imagination filled in the blanks. The app tracked her location as she drove across town, past the gym. I followed her route on the map, my heart pounding faster with each turn. She wasn't heading to her usual spot. Instead, she stopped at a small boutique hotel tucked away on a quiet street. The kind of place people go when they don't want to be seen. I sat there, staring at the screen, debating my next move. Part of me wanted to jump in the car, drive there, and confront them both. I pictured myself bursting into the room, catching them in the act, and watching her face crumble under the weight of her lies. But something held me back. Maybe it was the thought of how messy that would be, or maybe I just wanted to savor the moment when I finally exposed her. Instead, I waited. My hands trembled as I refreshed the app, watching her location stay pinned to the hotel. Minutes turned into hours, and each passing moment felt like a nail being driven into my chest. Finally, the app notified me that she was on the move again. She had left the hotel and was heading back home. When she walked through the door, she was glowing. Her skin was flushed, her hair slightly damp, and she had that post-workout energy she always seemed to have after seeing him. She greeted me with a smile, as if she hadn't just spent the morning betraying me. "Good session today?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "Yeah, Eric really pushed me hard today. I'm sore all over." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from saying something I'd regret. Instead, I got up from the couch and grabbed my keys. "Where are you going?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "Just out for a drive," I replied without looking back. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house, pretending like everything was fine. As I drove aimlessly through town, my mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. I had all the proof I needed, but confronting her wasn't as simple as I thought it would be. She'd deny it. I already knew that. She'd come up with excuses, twist the truth, and make me question my own sanity if I let her. No, I needed a plan. This wasn't just about catching her in a lie. It was about making sure she couldn't escape the consequences. By the time I returned home, she was in the shower. The sound of running water echoed through the house, but it did little to drown out the noise in my head. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone on the nightstand. For a moment, I considered unlocking it and reading through the messages myself, but I didn't need to. I already knew what I'd find. When she stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, she smiled at me as if nothing had changed. But everything had. The trust we'd built over the years was gone, and all that was left was the bitter taste of betrayal. I stood up, brushing past her without a word, and went to the living room. I couldn't be near her without feeling the weight of everything I knew. She was living a double life, and soon she'd have to face the consequences. But for now, I would wait. The game wasn't over yet. The next morning, I woke up early, long before she did. I lay in bed, listening to the soft hum of her breathing as the sunlight crept through the curtains. The anger I had pushed down yesterday bubbled to the surface again. How could she sleep so peacefully after what she had done? How could she lie so easily, while I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of the truth? I got out of bed, careful not to wake her, and headed to the kitchen. I needed time to think, a moment to breathe before facing her again. The coffee machine hummed softly as it brewed a fresh pot, the smell of roasted beans filling the room. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, rereading the messages between her and Eric. I wasn't sure why I tortured myself like that, but part of me wanted to make sure I hadn't imagined any of it. The texts, the photos, the secret meetings, it was all real. When she finally woke up and joined me in the kitchen, she acted like nothing was wrong. She leaned over, kissed me on the cheek, and poured herself a cup of coffee. The familiarity of the moment made my skin crawl. How many mornings like this had we shared while she was secretly seeing him? "What's on the agenda for today?" she asked, sipping her coffee. I shrugged, keeping my gaze fixed on my phone. "Nothing much. What about you?" "Same old. Gym, errands, maybe lunch with a friend." I nodded, pretending to be uninterested. But my mind was racing. I had checked the app earlier and saw that she had already texted Eric, confirming their plans to meet at the hotel again. I felt my fists clench under the table, the anger simmering just below the surface. As she got ready to leave, I watched her from the corner of my eye. She moved around the house with ease, humming softly to herself. There was no guilt in her steps, no hesitation. She was comfortable in her routine of deception. That realization stung more than I expected. When she left the house, I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I already knew where she was going and who she was meeting. Instead, I sat on the couch, scrolling through her messages, searching for any clue that could explain why she did it. Was it boredom? Was I not enough for her? Or had she simply grown tired of the life we built together? I found a message buried deep in the conversation that made my breath hitch. "Don't worry, he has no idea. He's too busy with work to notice anything." The words hit me like a brick. She didn't just betray me, she underestimated me. She thought I was blind, oblivious, too caught up in my own world to see what was right in front of me. That stung more than the affair itself. The fact that she believed I wasn't smart enough to catch on, that she could carry on her double life without consequences, it ignited something inside me. The disappointment was still there, but now it was accompanied by something stronger: determination. When she returned home that afternoon, she was wearing the same glow she always had after seeing him. I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for her, my phone resting in front of me. She smiled at me, oblivious to the fact that the game was over. "Hey," she said casually, placing her gym bag on the floor. "How was your day?" "Quiet," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "How was yours?" She shrugged. "Good workout." "I'm exhausted." I studied her for a moment, wondering if she could sense the shift in the air. But she didn't seem to notice. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, completely at ease. I wanted to say it then and there, to throw the evidence in her face and watch her try to wriggle her way out of it. But I held back. She had underestimated me once, and I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she could manipulate me again. Later that evening, while she was in the shower, I scrolled through her messages one last time. My fingers hovered over the app's delete button, but I couldn't bring myself to erase it. I wasn't done yet. There was still more to uncover, more lies to untangle. I needed to know just how deep her betrayal went before I confronted her. By the time she came out of the bathroom, I had already made up my mind. Tomorrow, I would confront her. No more waiting, no more second-guessing. The truth was on my side, and she couldn't deny it forever. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling once again, a thought crept into my mind. What if she didn't just deny it? What if she tried to turn the tables on me, twist the narrative, and make me the villain? I had seen her charm people before. How easily she could make them see things her way. Would she try to do the same to me? I clenched my jaw, pushing the thought away. It didn't matter. I had the evidence, and tomorrow, she would have no choice but to face it. The only question left was whether she would admit the truth or keep spinning her web of lies. Either way, the confrontation was inevitable, and this time, I wouldn't back down. The next morning, I woke before her again, but this time, I wasn't restless. I was focused. The tension that had been gnawing at me for days had shifted into something sharper, cold, calculated. Today, I wasn't the husband lying awake wondering where it all went wrong. Today, I was the man who knew exactly what had to be done. I watched her from the doorway as she slept, her face peaceful, oblivious to the storm about to hit. For a brief moment, I wondered if she ever thought about what it would feel like to be caught. Did she have contingency plans? Did she rehearse lies in front of the mirror, preparing for this very moment? She woke up slowly, stretching beneath the sheets, and smiled at me as if nothing had changed. I forced myself to smile back, playing my role for just a little while longer. But my patience had an expiration date, and it was approaching fast. I made coffee, I said, gesturing toward the kitchen. Thanks, she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. She got up, pulled on her robe, and shuffled into the kitchen. I followed her, feeling the weight of what was about to happen pressing against my chest. My phone was in my pocket, the screenshots of her messages and photos ready to be unleashed. She poured herself a cup of coffee, taking a sip before leaning against the counter. "What's the plan for today?" she asked, like it was any other day. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened the gallery. The first image was a photo of her outside the hotel, smiling at the camera, her hand resting on Eric's shoulder. I held the phone up, turning it so she could see. Her reaction was subtle at first. She blinked a few times, as if her brain needed an extra second to process what she was looking at. Then, her face paled, and her hand tightened around the coffee mug. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You tell me," I replied, my voice steady. I swiped to the next image, a screenshot of the message she had sent him that morning. "I'll be there in 30. Can't wait to see you." Her breath hitched, and she set the coffee mug down on the counter with a trembling hand. "It's not what it looks like," she said, shaking her head. "I can explain." "Don't." I cut her off, my voice cold. "Don't insult my intelligence." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes darted around the room, as if she were searching for an escape route or a lie that could fix this. I watched her closely, waiting for the inevitable denial. "It's not what you think," she said again, her voice stronger this time. "Eric and I, there's nothing going on between us. We're just friends. I know how this looks, but you have to believe me." I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through the kitchen. "Friends?" I repeated, shaking my head. "Is that what you call meeting him at a hotel and sending him messages like this?" I held up the phone again, showing her another screenshot. "Last night was amazing. Same time tomorrow." Her face crumpled for a split second before she regained control. "It's complicated," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I made a mistake." "A mistake," I echoed, the word tasting sour on my tongue. "How long has this mistake been going on?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "It wasn't serious," she said, dodging the question. "It didn't mean anything." I took a step closer, my anger boiling over. "Didn't mean anything? You've been lying to me, sneaking around, and meeting him behind my back. And you expect me to believe it didn't mean anything?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her tears manipulate me into backing down. She had spent months, maybe longer, betraying me without a shred of guilt. She didn't get to cry her way out of this. "I'm sorry," she choked out, her voice cracking. "Please, you have to believe me. I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," I said, my voice like steel. "You didn't think about me while you were sneaking off to see him. You didn't think about the damage you were doing." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away before she could touch me. Her face crumbled, and for a brief moment, I wondered if this was the first time she truly understood the weight of what she had done. "I'll do anything," she whispered, her voice desperate. "Just tell me what you want and I'll fix it." I stared at her, the woman I had once trusted more than anyone in the world, and realized that there was nothing she could say or do to fix this. The damage was done, and no amount of apologies or promises could undo it. "You want to know what I want?" I asked, stepping back. "I want the truth. No more lies. No more excuses." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll tell you everything." I crossed my arms, waiting for her to start. But in the back of my mind, I knew that even the truth wouldn't be enough. It was too late for that. She sat down at the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she wiped her tears away. I didn't sit with her. I stayed standing, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, waiting for her to dig herself deeper. Because that's what this was, layers upon layers of lies, and I was about to see how far down the rot went. I didn't plan for this to happen, she started, her voice barely a whisper. I swear, I didn't wake up one day and decide to betray you. I didn't respond. I let her speak because I needed to hear it. I needed her to lay it all out. Every ugly truth she had kept hidden from me. If she thought tears and apologies would soften me, she was mistaken. It started small, she continued. I was at the gym, and he approached me after class. He said I had potential, that he could help me reach my fitness goals faster. I didn't think anything of it. He was just being friendly. Friendly. I clenched my jaw, my fingers digging into my arms to keep from saying something I'd regret. Friendly. That word had a new, bitter meaning now. The sessions were normal at first, she said, her gaze fixed on the table. But then he started texting me outside of the gym, checking in on me, asking how I was feeling after workouts. I thought it was professional, like he cared about my progress. I scoffed. Progress. Is that what you were working on when you met him at the hotel? Her face flushed with shame, and she lowered her head. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to happen. But one night, after a late session, we went out for drinks. I should have said no, but I didn't. I was stupid. Stupid. Another word that didn't even come close to justifying what she had done. She wasn't stupid. She was calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing, and now she was scrambling to make it seem like a momentary lapse in judgment. How long? I asked, my voice cold and detached. She hesitated, her fingers twisting together on the table. A few months, she admitted. But it wasn't serious, I swear. It was just a distraction. A distraction. I felt the anger rise in me again, boiling just beneath the surface. I wanted to slam my fist down, shatter the illusion she was trying to create, but I held back. I needed to hear more. What did you tell him about me? I asked, my tone sharp. Did you paint me as the inattentive husband who drove you into his arms? Or did you lie to him too? Her eyes widened, and she shook her head quickly. I didn't talk about you like that. I told him we were fine. I didn't blame you. That almost made it worse. She wasn't unhappy with me, wasn't in a loveless marriage looking for an escape. She had everything she wanted at home, and she still chose to betray me. So why? I demanded. Why him? Why now? She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. I don't know, she whispered. Maybe I like the attention. Maybe I like feeling wanted. I know that sounds horrible, but it's the truth. I nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. She liked the attention. She liked feeling wanted, as if I hadn't spent years loving her, building a life with her, and making sure she knew she was everything to me. Did you ever think about me? I asked, my voice quieter now, but no less deadly. Did you ever think about what this would do to me? To us? Her tears fell faster, dripping onto the table as she sobbed into her hands. I'm so sorry, she cried. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't think you'd find out. And there it was. The truth she didn't even realize she had revealed. She didn't regret the affair. She regretted getting caught. I exhaled slowly, the weight of her words pressing down on me. The room felt suffocating, as if the air itself had turned against me. I needed space, time to think, but I wasn't done with her yet. You didn't think I'd find out, I repeated, shaking my head. You were willing to keep lying to me for as long as it took, weren't you? She didn't answer. Her silence was the confirmation I didn't need but expected. She would have kept sneaking around, kept meeting him at hotels, kept lying to my face, all while pretending to be the woman I thought I married. I stepped away from the counter, pacing the length of the kitchen as she cried into her hands. The anger inside me was a living thing, clawing at my insides, begging to be let out. But I couldn't afford to lose control. Not yet. I need to know one more thing, I said, stopping to face her. Are you still in love with him? She looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot and swollen. No, she said quickly, shaking her head. I never loved him. It was nothing. Nothing. I didn't believe that for a second. People don't destroy their marriages over nothing. But maybe that was her way of coping, of making herself feel less guilty. I walked toward the door, grabbing my coat off the hook. She stood up, panic flashing across her face. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice frantic. "For a walk," I replied, not looking at her. "I need to think." She rushed toward me, grabbing my arm. "Please don't leave. Let's talk about this." I pulled my arm away, the touch of her hand feeling like a brand against my skin. "We've talked enough for now," I said, my voice firm. "I need space." She stood there, frozen, as I walked out the door and into the crisp morning air. The cold hit me like a slap, but it was exactly what I needed to clear my head. I didn't know what my next move was, but one thing was certain. This wasn't over yet. I didn't walk far, just down the street to the park where I could sit and let the cold air bite at my skin, keeping me grounded while my mind raced through 100 different scenarios. She thought she had control of the situation now. That was clear from the way she begged me not to leave. She was desperate to steer the narrative, to make me see her as the remorseful wife who had made a mistake. But she didn't understand. I wasn't interested in forgiveness. I was interested in consequences. I stayed there for nearly an hour, watching joggers pass by, parents pushing strollers, kids playing on the swings, their laughter ringing out into the empty morning. How many of these people, I wondered, had secrets of their own? How many smiles were hiding betrayal? When I finally stood up and made my way back home, I knew exactly what I was going to do. She was in the living room when I walked in, pacing back and forth with her phone in her hand. Her eyes snapped to mine the second the door closed behind me, and relief washed over her face. "You came back," she said softly, as if she had actually worried I wouldn't. I ignored her and shrugged off my coat, hanging it on the rack by the door. I could feel her watching me, waiting for some sign that things could still be salvaged. "I thought about what you said," I finally told her, my voice measured and calm. "About how you'll do anything to fix this." She nodded quickly, wiping at her cheeks. "I will. Just tell me what you need." I leaned against the back of the couch, crossing my arms. "You want me to believe you're sorry? Then end it. Right here, right now. Call him." Her face paled. "What?" "Call him," I repeated. "Put him on speaker and end it. Tell him it's over, that you're done sneaking around, and you're never going to see him again." She opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came out. Her hand tightened around her phone, and I could see the internal battle playing out in her head. She hadn't expected this. She thought I'd want tearful apologies, promises of change. But this was something she couldn't prepare for. "Do it," I said, my tone leaving no room for negotiation. "Or don't. But if you don't, you'll be confirming exactly what I already know, that you don't want to let him go." Her eyes filled with fresh tears as she unlocked her phone, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through her contacts. I watched her every move, waiting to see if she'd try to delete messages or cover her tracks. But she didn't. She found his name and hovered her thumb over the call button, breathing heavily. "Do it," I repeated, my patience wearing thin. She pressed the button. The phone rang once, twice, and then his voice came through the speaker, casual and warm, as if they had just spoken minutes ago. "Hey, beautiful. Didn't expect to hear from you this soon." I felt my fists clench at his words, but I stayed silent, letting her handle it. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Eric, I can't do this anymore. It's over." There was a pause on his end, and then he laughed softly, as if she had just told a joke. "Come on, don't be like that. What's going on?" "I'm serious," she said, her voice rising. "We're done. I can't see you again. Don't call me. Don't text me. Just stay away." He didn't laugh this time. "Is he there?" he asked, his tone shifting. "Is that why you're saying this?" She glanced at me, her lower lip trembling. "It doesn't matter. I'm ending it." The line went quiet for a moment, and then he sighed. "Fine, if that's what you want." "It is," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Goodbye, Eric." She hung up and dropped the phone onto the couch, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed into her hands. I watched her for a moment, unmoved by her display of guilt. She thought that was the end of it, that I would see her pain and believe she was truly sorry. But I wasn't finished. "Good," I said, pushing myself off the couch. Now pack your things. Her head snapped up, panic flashing across her face. What? No, wait. You heard me, I said, my voice like steel. Pack your things and leave. You can stay with a friend or go to a hotel. I don't care. But you're not staying here. She shook her head frantically, stumbling to her feet. Please, we can work this out. I did what you asked. I ended it. And now you're facing the consequences, I replied, my tone cold. Did you think one phone call would erase months of lies? That I'd just forget everything you did? I love you, she cried, reaching for me. I don't want to lose you. I stepped back before she could touch me. You should have thought about that before you started meeting him at hotels. Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't let them affect me. I had spent enough time suffering in silence while she carried on behind my back. Now it was her turn. I'm giving you an hour, I said, heading toward the stairs. Pack whatever you need and go. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into a pillow as I walked away. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The part of me that still cared, that still wanted to hold her and comfort her, was buried too deep under the weight of her betrayal. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard her phone buzz on the couch. I paused, listening as she scrambled to pick it up. My gut told me exactly who it was, Eric, making one last attempt to pull her back into his orbit. But it didn't matter. She was out of my life, and I wasn't going to let her drag me down any further. This wasn't the ending I had envisioned for us, but it was the one she had chosen the moment she decided I wasn't enough. And now I was choosing something too, freedom. The house felt eerily quiet after she left, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Her presence had been a constant in this space, but now, even the air seemed different, lighter but colder. I stood by the window, watching her car pull out of the driveway, her packed bags in the trunk. She didn't look back, and neither did I. I should have felt relief. I should have felt the weight lifting from my chest, but all I felt was a dull ache, like a wound that hadn't started healing yet. Maybe that was normal. You don't spend years building a life with someone and then feel nothing when it all comes crashing down. The first few hours passed slowly. I cleaned up the kitchen, threw away the coffee she hadn't finished, and wiped down the counters as if scrubbing away the memory of her standing there, pretending everything was fine. But no amount of cleaning could erase the images burned into my mind. Her laughing with him, texting him, meeting him in places I had never known about. I checked my phone out of habit, scrolling through the messages and photos one last time before deleting the app. I didn't need to see any more. I had all the proof I'd ever need, and keeping it would only prolong the pain. But just as I was about to close my phone, an idea struck me. One final move, a way to make sure she and Eric both felt the consequences of their actions. I opened the photo gallery and selected a few key images. The ones of her outside the hotel, the messages where she confessed how much she enjoyed their time together. I transferred them to my email, attaching them to a single draft with no subject line. My finger hovered over the to field as I debated whether or not to take this final step. Did Eric have a wife? A girlfriend? Someone who deserved to know the truth? Just like I had? I didn't know much about his personal life, but I was willing to bet a man like him didn't exist in a vacuum. He had someone, somewhere, who believed in him just like I had believed in her. I searched his name on social media and found what I was looking for. A smiling woman in a photo next to him, her arm looped around his, her caption full of love and admiration. His wife. I copied her email from the contact info on her page and pasted it into the email draft. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the send button. Was this revenge or justice? Did it matter? All I knew was that I wasn't going to be the only one suffering while they walked away unscathed. I hit send. The message disappeared from the screen, and I sat back, exhaling slowly. It was done. The fallout was out of my hands now, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of closure, not because I had destroyed them, but because I had finally taken control. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I turned off my phone, not wanting to deal with any calls or messages from her. She'd figure out soon enough that her secret life wasn't so secret anymore. Whether she blamed me or herself didn't matter. I had given her the opportunity to come clean, to take responsibility for what she had done, and she had chosen to lie until the very end. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cold beer in hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It was peaceful. I thought about the man I had been just a few days ago, lying awake at night, tormented by suspicion. That man was gone, replaced by someone who had faced the truth head-on, no matter how ugly it was. My phone buzzed on the table beside me, but I ignored it. I didn't need to hear her excuses or her pleas for forgiveness. I had heard enough. Instead, I focused on the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, the distant hum of traffic, and the knowledge that tomorrow would be a new day, a day where I wouldn't be living in the shadow of her betrayal. I took a long sip of my beer, savoring the bitter taste. The bitterness felt fitting, but it wasn't permanent. It was just the aftertaste of something I had survived. As the sky darkened and stars began to peek through the clouds, I stood up, stretched, and walked back inside the house. It wasn't empty. It was just waiting for something new. And so was I. Bye.